Hello and welcome to another episode of Steelfur Speaks with, of course, me, Steelfur, aka Finbar, London-based card game player. At the moment, primarily playing Flesh and Blood, but I also have a load of like Arkham Horror, Ashes Reborn, Legend of the Five Rings. I play Magic the Gathering on Arena. I do a lot of stuff. And I also just like to look at card games that I don't really know yet. And obviously, in front of us, we have what is currently quite hyped, I guess. I bought some because it looked kind of fun, but I'm not really sure if it's the game for me, but we'll see. But, you know, it's always good to try out new things and have a bit of a look. So what I bought was two of these release box event boxes, and I bought an Alpha Iceman deck because he just looked fun with his ice cube and his what's a slingshot? Yeah. So he looked kind of fun, so I bought that, and I bought these. Opened some packs, pulled out some of those holo cards that everyone's crazy about. I think this one is considered reasonably good. It generates resources to play for other stuff. I've got a blue ox here, which I'm quite enjoying actually. I had some other stuff. I had something called Sam something, which apparently is a very rare card. To be honest, I just sold that one when I opened it because someone wanted £100 for it or something, and that kind of paid for all of this. And then let me tell you, when I can open a game, sell a card, and then pay for this review, that's really useful to me because obviously I don't make any money from YouTube or anything like that. So it just helps with the review process if a game does pay for itself, and I do get lucky and open a card that is worth hype. So in these videos, I really like to sit down, and really the goal for me is to review the experience as a new player, try and learn the game, and see how long it takes me to learn the game. As well as sort of looking at the cards and, you know, how the art is and things like that, and kind of giving a bit of a rating for the game in terms of like feel, value, you know, all of those kind of things that people are usually kind of concerned about when they're getting into a new game and thinking about the products that they could buy to get into it. So let's put the shiny cards away for a second, and let's go into both of these, I guess. So this is a release event box, which comes with a little notebook to teach you how to play the game, a little rule book. Very old school rule book, I should say. A lot of games don't give them out like this anymore. They just give you a link to online rules, but I think this is very important. Games should come with the rules that teach you how to play them. I think it's one of the essential parts of people sitting down and learning how to play a game. And one of the tests really for these kind of games is how quickly does it take you or me to learn how to play them as a new player, right? And I haven't looked at these yet, so I don't actually know how to play the game, but we're going to see if I can quickly teach myself how to play the game with this starter deck. So I've got my deck here. I start with a spell book of at least 40 cards, which I assume this is. I haven't counted them. Though if a starter deck doesn't come with enough cards to be a legal deck, then that is a mistake. Okay, so this comes with 39 cards as well as a sealed, and this is what I got. I got this shiny red dragon, a sealed promo card. So you're supposed to crack open the promo and put it into the deck, which I think is kind of a good side of things. However, yes, as I did expect. So with this deck, it would be fine because I opened my promo deck of 39 cards and I got Gastian Diether, a dragon, to go in my promo deck of fire cards, which is good. However, I have been told that not every deck has a promo that matches the element that comes with it. So these starter decks are all fire, from what I've seen, with a bit of lightning, and I have seen people opening like water and ice cryptids in there, so that wouldn't be so good. And also, as an initial just negative part, so in my Iceman deck, I opened an Alpha Minnesota Iceman as my promo. Now, you might be thinking, hey, that's amazing, but if we look at the Alpha Minnesota Iceman deck, there is already one in there. It's the key card of the deck, so you already have an Alpha Minnesota Iceman here. Inside the deck itself, and unfortunately this is limit 1 per spellbook. So whilst I did get a cool promo and now I have a spare one that I can trade with someone, which is great if I can find someone to trade with. That does mean that out of the gate, this is not a legal starter deck, which means I can't actually buy this and play in a tournament because I opened the wrong promo. I will have to go somewhere else and find a way to fix it. Now, that being said, this deck does come with a booster pack, so assumedly I would be able to take one card. I mean, this is a few booster packs combined, but assumedly I would be able to take one card from a booster pack and put it in there. But if I'm a new player and I've just opened this deck, I'm not going to know what any of these cards do. So not having a 40-card deck and having the promo that's supposed to go with the deck be one that doesn't work is a sort of initial negative feeling that I'm not really cool, not cool with. But I think it's just something that should be better avoided. I think if you're going to put promos in and make them part of the playable deck that you're giving out as a starter, they should have... you should seed the promos in a way that makes sure that the promo that comes with the deck is always going to be playable in the deck. And I know there is another Frost Dragon that is given out in these promos. So the Alpha Iceman deck probably should have contained the Frost Dragon so that could always go into the deck that comes with it. So that's just an initial negative point. But we won't let that sidetrack us from anything. So we'll continue on with the rules in a second. I guess the other point to review, just as I like to do in these videos, just in terms of like card stock, these cards feel great. They actually do. They feel like for a brand new game, they feel good. Good print quality, very solid. A bit dry rather than glossy. I mean, if we take up some Flesh and Blood card or something like that, these feel a lot glossier. These feel kind of a bit drier, which some people will like, other people's won't. Personally, I like the glossy feel of cards. They feel better protected, like they're not going to pick up as much dirt. These do feel like they might accumulate dirt, but you're going to use sleeves, so that's fine. In terms of design of the cards, I'm not really feeling the red borders. I really don't like. I mean, just to compare it to anything else we've got here, I feel like black borders on cards make the art pop a lot better. The red borders do feel kind of, they just, I don't know if they click as well. Though I understand from reading just briefly about it that maybe the community voted for the red borders, and they don't. I mean, it's not a make or break part of the card. So, I mean, in terms of information displayed, I mean, you're pretty clear, gives you an idea of what type of card it is. It's a beastie. I think there's some spells in here as well, so that's fairly at the top. It is very readable in the font that it is. Fire Elemental, how many you can include in your deck, that's quite good information. I assume this is cost and this is HP, so that's fairly easy to read. They are a little bit close together for my liking. I wouldn't mind if those were spread out a bit more. Then down the left here, you've got keyword abilities, which... So I understand that games have a lot of keywords they need to get over, and I'm assuming there's a point in this rulebook that explains to me what all the keywords are. However, I will say that for a starter game that people, haven't played before, having the keywords be symbols rather than explaining what they do in text is a bit of a misstep, in my opinion. Okay, so here we go. Here are traits. So this character can be converted, so I can fatigue the character to generate one aura as the same type. So it's kind of like a Llanowar Elves. So I can tap this for 1 red. That's good. And the other one is Fleet. So it doesn't enter the arena tapped. Okay, so it doesn't enter tapped, and I can tap it to get 1 aura. Okay, I don't know how I generate auras outside of that, but that's kind of interesting. But there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. There are 20 separate traits that can appear on these cards with no indicator on the cards themselves as to what the traits do. Now, that's not going to be a problem long term. You're going to have this book with you. You're going to look up what they do. But it is a certain amount of memory fatigue in terms of having to remember exactly what they all do. Certainly for a new player and for a casual player, I feel like that will cause some issues. If you haven't played the game in a long time and you've lost your rulebook, you're going to have problems there. So I think that's just something to be aware of. I don't think it's a massive problem. It doesn't look like every beastie has one of these. So maybe it's just they're not that common. You just need to memorize a few for your deck. And obviously, when you're playing against someone, you'll be able to ask them what they do. But if they were used, just looking through my other cards as well, it does seem like they're not used all the time. So it doesn't mean, you might not get information overload on the board, which is good. Because that's really the big concern with something like this, is that I put 5 of these on the board. They all have 5 symbols. My opponent has to keep track of 5 different ongoing abilities or static abilities. I assume this guy is flying, which will do something. No, not flight. This one is immortal. Okay, cool. Cannot be destroyed when its LP reaches 0. Must be removed by special means. That's quite important, but it's also very easy to forget, I would say. And it also has fear. So when you contract it, you target someone else and toss a coin. If it's heads, the other one is placed back inside its opponent's chapter, which I assume is hand. So those are 2 quite big effects to remember, loaded very heavily into these keyword symbols. And I think one thing we've seen recently in card games is that move away from keywording or symbolization of abilities in favor of a lot less abilities. I'm drawing on Flesh and Blood again as a good example, but in favor of a lot less keywords, which can at least be spelt out in text on their basic form. So, for example, for Bounding Demigon, we have Blood Debt, and it tells you exactly what Blood Debt does. And once it's been in the set for a while, you do start to see those get phased out. But at least at the initial stage, you do in fact have the keyword there and written. So the idea that there's a base set that introduces 20 different keywords based on a symbol that you kind of have to memorize is a little bit of a step. Ultimately, I will say this is the positive about it. When players get very conversant with these, it does lead to a greater depth of gameplay that can't be replicated by games that rely on less keywords, right? Because you do actually have a lot of options automatically built into this, right? Okay, and that's important to understand. So it is an upfront mental cost, and there is a mental maintenance to this kind of tactic, but it can also lead to quite in-depth gameplay because you can add a lot more effect onto a card. Like, for example, if we go back to our lovely Fire Elemental, you will see that those abilities don't need to be written out. So she can have a different ability which turns an aura, which I assume is sort of an enchantment or a permanent, into a creature with health and damage for the turn, and then it dies at the end of a turn, right? That's kind of cool. So assumedly you activate that ability and it just comes into play, and then she's got another ability which isn't taken up by these keywords, as versus our lovely Bounding Demigon, who could only have one ability and the keyword Blood Debt because there wasn't space for more abilities. So there are pros and cons to this decision. I don't just want to be bashing on it, but, I am wary of that kind of heavy keyword loading as a feature of the game, because it does just add a bit of a mental tax to get used to that. So that's kind of just an initial first impression on that particular part of the things. Otherwise, I think the art is potentially not for me. I find some of the cards to be kind of cool, but mostly I find them just to be a bit silly or a bit cutesy. I'm not really fond of how it's drawn, though I do like something like this where it's just a very simple fireball and the blues and the reds are really sort of clean and come together. The forest artwork is nice. Some people were joking this does look like something that like children could draw, but I don't think they appreciate how difficult it is to draw stuff like this in a simple, stylized manner. That is very understandable and accessible. It is very definitely a chosen art style rather than necessarily a problem. So I think that's fine, and I think a lot of these are going to be quite accessible to a lot of people. It doesn't have the gore or the grimness or the darkness that you find in something like Flesh and Blood or some of the high fantasy games. It doesn't have the detail that Magic requires, which can be really nice to appreciate a specific card, but also quite intimidating as well because you couldn't replicate it. One of the things that if we draw the obvious analogy between this and say Pokemon, one of the things that made Pokemon sell so well is that the Pokemon's core design is actually very simple, and it was very, very easy for a child to draw their own Pokemon or imagine their own Pokemon and add them. And when you think that all of these are based on legends, there are going to be plenty of urban legends that aren't included in this that a child could theoretically draw, design their own abilities for, engage with in a very active manner. And I'm thinking, being Irish, I'm thinking about stuff like, actual leprechauns as trickster spirits rather than whatever Americans think leprechauns are. I'm thinking of the banshees. I'm thinking of that kind of darker side of Irish folklore, which would actually fit quite well into this. So let's get back to our review of the pre-release box. 3 packs. It does seem like the decks are all the same. I hope they're not. There might just be clumping. I talked to a friend of mine. I think he got a different one, but I did get 2 of the same, which is not good as an initial experience, because obviously you want variety. If you buy 2 of these for like your kids to play with or to play with your friends, I'm not saying this is just a kids game, but obviously given the art style and the way it copies Pokemon, this is obviously somewhat intended for kids. Given that, it would be very good if the starter decks had different stuff in, and hopefully these pre-release packs or release event boxes do have more variety, and I've just got unlucky and got 2 of the same. Let's say it that way. Otherwise, I think it's a legal deck with the promo. If you get the right one, that's fine. So we are going to have a bit of a read of the rules. You have 1,000 life. In order to win, you have to reduce the LP of your opponent's caster to 0. That's fine. You start the game by drawing 7 cards. If you don't like it, you can mulligan a card back in. Fairly standard for card games. Beginning of each turn, you draw a card, so it's kind of just copying Magic in that regard, but that is a tried and tested formula, I guess. One that I have gone away from in recent years. I prefer card games that don't follow that formula, as they create too much opportunity for you to not do well, basically, because you drew a bad card, but that's a discussion for another day. You can put aura pages, which are these auras similar to Pokemon, into the deck and tap them, so they're lands, basically, to pay for beasties. You can only put 1 or out at the beginning of a turn, so those are basically lands from Magic. We could have a very big discussion about why the land mechanic is very, very outdated, but I don't think we need to. I think a lot of people are familiar with that, so we'll see how it plays out in Metazoo. Though as someone who has been mana screwed many, many times in Magic, that is also an initial thing that might put me off this game. Pages stay where played. You can't move any card in the arena unless specified. That's quite interesting. So when you put something down, you have to put it in. Everything comes in tapped except Terra and auras, so lands and whatever Terra is. We'll find that out later. When a page is used to generate aura, attack, or defend, you fatigue it, so you tap it. Aura pages may be fatigued on a player's turn to generate aura. For beasties, it does not cost any aura to attack, defend, or activate powers, but you must tap them. If a page's life total becomes 0, it's destroyed. When it's destroyed, it goes into limbo, which is your graveyard. When a spell or a potion is used, it immediately goes into the cemetery after it's resolved. So I guess cemetery is your graveyard, limbo must be something else. Okay, you may contract Terror during your turn for no aura cost. Any Terror in the arena can be used to activate 4th wall effects. So one of the things that is attracting a lot of people to this game, it's good to talk about now, is the existence of these 4th wall effects. So every card has, and this is the bottom line, has symbols that dictate 4th wall effects, or has a 4th wall effect built into the ability on the card. There's a lot less cards that have an ability built in, but some of them do have abilities, like, for example, if you have a plant near the game table, you will get a bonus. That is something that is attracting a lot of people to this game. I can't see if I can find an example. That is attracting a lot of people to this game because it just creates weirdness or fun reasons to do odd stuff. Like, carry a bonsai tree around with you all day. So I can't really say that I've seen one yet. Let's see if I can just find one to give you guys an example. Okay, so for example, this alien astronaut, let's see if I can get this on the camera. Come on, focus for me. Come on. I know you want to. There we go. Alien astronaut may only be contacted if you phone home, however you define it. So you can't play this card unless you pick up your phone and call your house or wherever home is for you, right? Now, that is an optional effect that you can play with or without, but obviously a lot of people, if you're playing this sort of game, are going to play with those effects because it's, more fun, right? And why wouldn't you? I mean, why wouldn't you if that's what they do? See if I can find another one for you guys. Dice rolling. Turn something into a sheep. There's lots of little fun effects in here. I've seen one which was like, put your hand on the top of this card and destroy every card you can touch with your fingers. So you put your hand down like this and you destroy every card that you touch. So stuff like that is quite fun. They also just have some cards that have like a bonus or a penalty based on the weather or whether or not there is a terror in play. So this card, for example, our lovely giant salamander, gets 50. There's a penalty. I think it gets a penalty when it's within a certain distance of a forest. Here we go. Fourth wall effects give you boosts in the event you are within or nearby a certain place or object in real life. What does nearby mean? Unless specified by a page, it means within 1 mile or within eyesight. Below are the current fourth wall effects. So city, daytime, desert, dusk, farm, forest, ground, island, lake, lightning, meteor shower, mountain, nighttime, ocean, raining, river, snowing, stars, suburban. Certain effects and objects trigger the abilities themselves if they have ambiguous definitions. For example, there is a card that will retreat back into the hand of the player if there is a train that goes past, but you can also play a train card. So this is kind of fun. Like if I play a train, there's a monster that's afraid of trains that will run away. But also if a train goes by my house, the monster will also run away because he's afraid of trains. So stuff like that is genuinely quite fun. And I think a lot of people will enjoy that style of gameplay. Yep. So this red 50 basically means that if there is a forest within 1 mile or within eyesight, I can get plus 50 damage on my attacks because his ability burns trees. And you can see that the text of the ability tells you what to look for, but you can also play it just with this text on as well if you just want to play, oh, there's a forest. So there are a few ways to do this. So you can play if there's a felled tree within eyesight, or if a forest beastie has been placed into limbo of a cemetery or the afterlife in the last 2 turns, he gets plus 25 damage. So if there's a forest, but also if there's a forest within sight, you could get plus 25 damage as well, up to 50. So that's kind of interesting. There's the fourth wall effects that go on, and that's what's attracting a lot of people to this game. My initial responses about fourth wall effects were very simple. For a casual game aimed at a low to high, well, a low, we'll just say a younger audience. Brilliant, like genuinely brilliant. Ways to get ways to have a deck do different things if you're traveling to different places. If a kid's going to the beach and your family's going to the beach and they build water decks and bring them onto the beach house you're staying in, like that kind of thing is just fun as a kid. Like I can't wait to go on that beach holiday. If it rains, we can play Metazoo inside, and all my water beasties will have double bonuses. Like stuff like that people really care about. As a competitive card game player, which I am, I don't really see it working. Like, if there's a felled tree, there's not going to be a felled tree within eyesight if I'm playing in a convention center. I'm not going to bring a felled tree with me. So, what is, how do I get this bonus on this card, or do I just not play this card? And then, are there a lot of cards that I'm like? That's the question: is are there a lot of cards I'm not going to be able to play because I don't have the ability to turn on the fourth wall effect? Which means, if I have to take, say, half of this pile and just say, okay, well, those are fourth wall effects and they're not very good without them, I'm building a competitive deck out of this half, which doesn't have any fourth wall effects. As a competitive player, I have to think like that because I'm not going to be playing in a forest and I'm not going to be playing in a place where I'm counting the number of light bulbs above me or something like that. I'm going to be playing in a convention center, which I won't have any control over, and then I won't be able to control the flow of the game. So we've got a good outline here of different page types. You can sideboard. That's good. Mana disappears at the end of a turn. So stars are fourth wall abilities. Powers are things I can activate by tapping the creature. And attacks are things I can do. Oh, there's another fourth wall effect right here. Damage dealt by him to a caster is doubled if the caster is under the age of 13. Very good. So this is a good card for beating up your children with. Okay, so that's what Terror is, by the way. Terror is a way to get fourth wall effects when they don't exist in real life. There are 6 slots on the board, so I play one, my opponent can play them. Whenever a 7th one is played, the first one to get played is destroyed. And essentially, if I don't have Snow, for example, to activate the fourth wall effect on this, I can play Snowing from the deck, and I think there are Snowing cards in here that will give me that aura bonus that I need to, there we go, Snowing, to get those fourth wall effects, even though it's not snowing outside. So that's kind of cool, and your opponent can't just get rid of them very quickly. They have to play quite a few of their own to get rid of them, so that is kind of interesting. So it does seem like there is a mix of fourth wall effects that I will activate, basically like arena cards from Pokemon, and fourth wall effects that I need to activate by doing something specific in real life. These ones I expect decks can be built around. Like, for example, in my Frost deck, a lot of cards have a bonus if it is snowing. So obviously one of my priorities is going to be to get snowing onto the table. Yeah, is to get snowing onto the table to reap that benefit on all of the characters that I play, right? Because they all seem to get a benefit from snowing. And that is kind of a fun thing. I mean, we've seen that in Pokemon before, where you'd set up an arena card, which would be like rain or heavy rain or sunshine, and then all the Pokemon would get a bonus or a penalty based on what they're doing, which I think is quite good to know. So that's kind of cool. I don't know that that's necessarily groundbreaking. I think with the addition of the non-terror-based fourth wall effects, it's quite fun. And obviously the fact that they do apply from real-life effects rather than just these arena setting cards is quite enjoyable too. Okay, I have run into another 2 issues, I think, for learning this game. Attacking is fine. You select a target of the attacks, you use the beastie's attack, you pick it, You can attack face down trapped cards, and then the effect happens to the beastie who's attacking them, or if it's a beastie, it gets revealed. You can defend with any number of creatures by tapping them. That's good. There is a first strike trait as well, just like magic, basically. But here we go. So there are additional things that I think. Okay, so this is probably going to be familiar for people from Pokemon, but I think it's a bit of an issue again for learning this game. There is something called the Aura Wheel. Anytime a page would deal damage, so this is what the Aura Wheel looks like. Yeah. You can see it there. I don't know what those symbols are, but I assume they correspond with symbols on the cards. Anytime a page would deal damage to a page of an aura type it is strong against, it deals plus 20 damage. This includes spells, effects of pages, and attacks. Additionally, some attacks may feature an aura symbol next to their damage number. Any attack with an aura symbol is considered to be strong against the aura type of that symbol. Whew. Okay, so why does this cause me problems, right? Because this is another thing to memorize from outside of the game, and it doesn't seem like there's any indicator on the cards to remind us of this effect, right? Which is a problem. Okay, now to a certain extent, it is probably, somewhat intuitive, at least at this bottom level, because you can see that fire is good against trees and ice. Ice and trees are good against water. Water is good against stone. Lightning is good against water. Water is good against fire, right? So that's kind of familiar to anyone who is familiar with Pokemon or just, general how the universe works. Water breaks up stone. Lightning shocks water. Those kind of things. This top one, though, weird circle void thing, which is probably like, I don't know, void or celestial or something. It's good against ghosts. Ghosts are good against moons. Moons are also good against ghosts and this power thing. And then there's the grey cards which don't matter. Like, this is a really great thematic thing, and if you look at Pokemon, it works. One thing I will say to you is that Pokemon has had many, many years to establish this. And this part is fine. For all the kids who are coming to play this game after playing Pokemon, this part is fine. They're going to understand this very well. Whatever's going on up here, I don't really know. And it's just another piece of information to remember, like the symbols, that is not contained on the cards, that creates a mental load in playing the game that people are going to forget quite a lot. And it is somewhat intuitive, again, just like the symbols. Once you've learned, it does give you design space and balance effects. You could make a very powerful fire creature, knowing very well that there's a very powerful water creature that can smack it to pieces. And if a fire deck gets too strong, people can start running a meta water deck, just like they do in Pokemon, to counteract the strength of that deck. But it does create another mental load, especially when you add in this top wheel of strengths versus weaknesses. Like, if a moon deck gets matched up against a fire deck, who wins? It's just based on the strength of the cards. This doesn't come into play. This is kind of like an extra level that I'm not sure if the game needs. And we see on the next page as well, we've got another level of extra game information that isn't necessarily intuitive on the cards themselves. So all of my ice cards, I noticed this, say frozen on them, and they have this symbol. And I was not aware of what this symbol does. Okay? So what does it do? It can affect artifacts or beasties. If something is frozen, it's fatigued and cannot be awoken until X number of turns have passed. Burn loses 20 LP every time it declares an attack. Poison 10 LP each time it's been poisoned for 2 turns. You can be poisoned 3 times at once. Paralyze. Flip a coin to see if it attacks. So that's similar to Pokemon. They've copied a lot of effects from Pokemon, which is good because they will be translatable to this new game. But for people who haven't played Pokemon before, and there are plenty of people who haven't played Pokemon before, there is another step of learning to memorize all of these effects. Pokemon gets away with it because it was created 25 years ago, and people learn those effects slowly will have already memorized them and have already had some exposure to Pokemon. But as a new card game being designed, having those additional effects there is a barrier to entry that I'm not really sure I'm completely comfortable with. Because we just did, I don't know if you've seen it, but we released a video on Genesis Battle for Champions, and by this point in that video, I was saying, absolutely, I know how my turn plays out, I know how to play, I'm ready to sit down and start playing, there's loads of interesting effects. When I was learning Flesh and Blood, we were at very much the similar point. After 5 minutes, I knew exactly what each card did in terms of how do I pay for stuff, how do I play stuff, how do I block, how do I attack, how do I defend. And then all of the nuance came out of those little abilities. I'm only halfway through this book, and I've already found 3 things that I'm going to have to come back and check in order to actually figure out how to keep playing the game. Because anytime I do an attack, I'm going to have to check, am I doing extra damage from my fire onto my ice? And okay, I'm going to learn it. I'm not slow to learn these things. It is just that level of another step to learn. And then we have a set of advanced rules, which is fine. Every game like this needs advanced rules to figure out what things are happening. That's fine. We probably don't need to go into all of those just yet. Okay, so there we go. At 35 minutes of this video, we've talked about the card types, we've talked about how easy it is to learn, and ultimately, we kind of know how this game is going to play. I'm going to draw my 7 cards. Let's just shuffle. Don't need sleeves. It's just a starter deck. No one panic. But we're going to draw my 7 cards from this deck, and we're going to know how to play, right? $1,000 health each. And if I get mana screwed, we'll see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so I draw my opening chapter, say chapter, and I have no lands. Okay, good. Probably need to shuffle again. Maybe shuffle a bit more. Can't match because they haven't got sleeves in, which is fine. That is one thing that I do dislike about putting lands into a deck. I think it's one thing that a lot of people have gotten over in this game. In modern games, you no longer do that because essentially it's not ideal. Okay, so at the start of my turn, I put down a Flame Aura. I tap it like I would a land in Magic. I play out a giant salamander. People have recently been logging outside my house, so I can see a felled tree stump. So I will... This comes in tapped, sorry. So I give it to my opponent to do a turn. They play something else. Start of my turn, I draw another card. This untaps. Can I spend auras from one type to play another type? I don't think I can. Yeah, no, it takes 2 fire, so I don't have fire, so I can't use that to pay for this, so I've just got to not play any of those. I can play a fireball, which will then burn something, so that goes to my discard pile. And I have to tap this. The burned thing will take damage for 2 turns, and then I can tap this to deal 25 damage to their player or to a creature if they've got one. My opponent takes a turn, I take a turn again. Now I still don't have another land, so I can play this Paralyze to stop whatever creature my opponent played. Stop it from attacking. The dice rollers automatically heads unless something says otherwise. And this isn't an optimized deck, but you can see immediately I'm land screwed. Okay, I can play a River, which is not going to help any of the beasties that I currently have on the table, so nothing to do. I can play another Lightning, which I can't use. But, I mean, okay, so after 30 minutes, I do roughly know how to play this game, but there are going to be some times when I'm just looking at these cards as a new player, and I'm just going to be like, I have no idea what that one does. So I think that's kind of just a bit wary about all that sort of extra game information you have to memorize in order to successfully play a game of this. But that's fine. As a review, these starter deck packs, if you're buying 2, try and pick 2 from different sides of the box or shuffle them around so you don't get the same ones. The promos are nice. Hopefully you get one that will let you build a legal deck with it. Otherwise, you're going to have to just take a card from that booster you got. For the actual Iceman decks, they came with this little coin, which is used for something. I don't know what it is, but I guess you've got to flip it to determine paralysis and things. So it's got a heads or tails, which is quite nice. So I'm going to hold on to that. They do come with the same rulebook that we've just reviewed. They do come with a deck and a promo, which hopefully, again, is one that you can play. They also come with this, which I haven't looked at yet, but I think it is a map, maybe. I think it's a play mat, firstly, which is a nice touch, to be fair, especially if it's a 2-person play mat. No, it's not. It's a 1-person play mat. But you can see this is quite good to learn. The art is all right. Some of it's a bit creepy. There's a bunny rabbit with a hatchet there. But kids like creepy stuff. That's fine. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So, of course, you've got the terror that you put in the middle. This is quite nice. This is quite useful. And then we have a... Okay, so this is actually very cool. Because the whole point about this set is that it's about cryptids. And cryptids are basically creatures from mythology and legend in terms of where the creepy stuff comes from, like, Yeti and, Chupacabra and all these sort of, demons and creatures and things that people see or get confused about, including aliens and stuff like that. So you can see on this, we have a map of the US of where all these come from, where some of the creatures from the sets come from. So you could look up the ones you've opened and see where they come from, and then maybe do a bit of a Google and have a bit of an understanding of... have just a bit of an understanding of the history of why these things were created and why people think these are real and stuff like that. Obviously, this is Metazoo USA. Hopefully they do expand outside the USA. Europe is full of amazing creatures and things like that. But this is actually a very nice touch. I'm actually very, very keen on that because obviously this is going to appeal to people. I know when I was younger, I thought cryptids were very cool and like local legends and folk tales about scary creatures and stuff like that. And I'm not even into horror. Like I don't like horror films. I don't like anything like that. It was just cool that people were thinking up these things and that there might be interesting stuff lurking around the corner you can't see. Though for me, it was always more benevolent. I wanted a dragon that was mine, and I wanted to be a knight and to have a sword and shield and things like that, rather than to be weird and creepy. Anyway, Metazoo review. Art style grows on you, I think. Card design, the font is a little weird. There's a lot of information crammed in there. Even just on this one, you can see how much information is crammed in there. The flavor text being on most of the cards is good, and having a link to... that's not going to focus because of the plastic. And having a link to... the stories behind the cards is really cool, and the basis in real world myth and legends is really cool. I do have those initial qualms about the amount of symbols, abilities, and flavor text it uses, as well as the amount of extra game information of things like weaknesses and things like paralysis and status effects. Will be quite common to anyone who is coming from Pokemon, but it is still a concern because this is a new game. You are going to have to memorize how all of those work. You are going to have to check the rules a lot. So I think that is something to be worried about. But equally, I think it's quite a good game. And I think it is one that a lot of people are going to have fun playing. Let's put it that way.